The Philadelphia Eagles' greatest quarterback in franchise history, Nick Foles, called it a career today. We honor him on today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Thursday edition of the podcast. We're brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Louis DiBiase joining you on this Thursday edition of the podcast, the day before the Eagles' first preseason game of the 2024 season. Tomorrow night, they kick off in Baltimore, Maryland against the Ravens. Today, we're going to get into 6 defensive players that I'm keeping a close eye on in that matchup. We'll do the offensive side of the football tomorrow. But before we get into the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles, we have to honor maybe the most important player in franchise history who retired today. I think, and maybe this is my kicked out of the nest take for the day as it is Thursday. Maybe this is my unpopular take. Nick Foles is the greatest quarterback in franchise history. And there's a lot of, who's the GOAT in any sort of debate. Like, it's always, there's so many different criterias that you could dive into for why you think somebody's the GOAT. But Nick Foles, to me, is the Eagles' greatest quarterback of all time. And he retired today after, to me, what is the most electric roller coaster ride, lightning in a bottle sports career that I've ever seen. It was just one of the most unique careers that you've ever seen from an athlete, where a guy is so nuclear with one football team, legendary, like historic. And then when he goes to any other team, he's almost a nobody. But it almost makes the story of Nick Foles in Philadelphia that much more special, that when he went to St. Louis, when he went to Kansas City, when he went to Jacksonville, when he went to Chicago or Indianapolis, he was just a guy. He was Clark Kent. But then when he was in our jersey, he was Superman. Midnight Green, putting on that jersey, was his Superman cape. And I think that makes his story in Philadelphia all that much more special. I mean, this guy, when he was in Philadelphia, had the nuclear codes. I mean, when he was in a rhythm, it was an insanity type of run every time he was with this football team. You look back to 2013, the 27-2 run, 2017, of course, outdueling the greatest quarterback of all time, who in the Super Bowl threw for 500 yards, and Nick Foles outdueled him in a Super Bowl shootout to give you your franchise's first ever Super Bowl. I mean, is that not the most perfect first championship ever? And then the 2018 run, by the way, is very underrated. Like, people don't talk enough about that 2018 run when Nick Foles goes back to being Carson Wentz's backup. Wentz fractures his back. The Eagles are dead in the water after that stressful loss to the Dallas Cowboys. They're 6-7. The season feels all but lost. Nick Foles takes over, wins 2 shootouts, I should say, against offensive juggernauts in the Los Angeles Rams, the Houston Texans. He wins 3 straight to get that team into the playoffs. He then goes on the road and beats the number 1 ranked Chicago Bears defense, scoring the game-winning touchdown on 4th and goal with Leonard Floyd in his face. He stands in that pressure and hits Golden Tate for a touchdown. Nearly got this football team that year back to the NFC Championship game, almost on a repeat run. I mean, this guy was electric. He was dynamic. He was bold. He was clutch. I mean, obviously, look at the clutchness of the Philly special and the 4th and 1 in their own ends, in their own territory. It's 33-32 in Super Bowl 52. Gotta have it. Evades pressure, hits Zach Ertz for the conversion, or that game-winning drive where he hits Zach Ertz for the game-winning touchdown. Like, obviously, that was clutch. But you look at that game against Chicago. You look at the game in 2018, the shootout against the Texans, where it's 3rd and 10, and Jadeveon Clowney is coming up through the A-gap, drills Nick Foles. He stands in there, hangs in there, does not bail, hits Alshon Jeffrey over the middle for a 15-yard gain to pretty much save the season. I mean, Nick Foles is one of the most exciting, and important players in Eagles history. Heck, he has two of the best passes in franchise history. The flea flicker to Torrey Smith in the NFC Championship, the Corey Clement touchdown in the Super Bowl. Just what a crazy, weird career. And yet it's so beautiful that this is the guy that ended up winning the Super Bowl for the Eagles, because it was never supposed to be him, which makes it feel so Philly, right? Such an underdog story. They wanted Russell Wilson in the draft, not Nick Foles. They wanted Michael Vick to start in 2013, not Nick Foles. They traded Nick Foles for Sam Bradford. They wanted Sam Bradford to be the face of the franchise, not Nick Foles. They wanted Carson Wentz to lead them to that Super Bowl run in 2017, another deep run in 2018, not Nick Foles. And yet Nick Foles is the guy of all these quarterbacks in Eagles history with the statue outside Lincoln Financial Field. What an insane, cool career. Congrats to Nick Foles. Just an unbelievable time in Philadelphia. He's going to retire with the Eagles as a member of this team in the home opener, week 2 against the Atlanta Falcons. And again, my thrown out of the nest take for the day is that Nick Foles is the greatest quarterback in franchise history. Does he have the longevity, the quantity of a career that Donovan McNabb had or Randall Cunningham? Absolutely not. But sometimes quality beats quantity. What Nick Foles did in 10 quarters in that 2017 run is more impactful than a decade plus worth of tape that Donovan McNabb put on for the Eagles. Everything Nick Foles did in that, and by the way, that was the 10 best quarters of football I've maybe ever seen from a quarterback, what he did in that span alone. And then you can also throw in 2013. You can also throw in 2018. What he did, though, in just 3 games, to me, is more impactful than anything any other Eagles quarterback did. And then you add on those other historic runs. To me, if I was putting one Eagles quarterback on the Mount Rushmore of this franchise's history, it's Foles. So congrats to Nick Foles on an incredible career. Not everybody can be Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. Not everybody can be amazing for 10 to 15 years. But I think if you were to say to Nick Foles coming out of the 2012 draft, when only Doug Peterson, by the way, gave him an in-person workout, which is another amazing story, because nobody wanted Doug either. The fact that those two guys got it done for this team is awesome. And for him to come back to Philly and do it, just stuff of movies. But I think if you were to tell Nick Foles of the 2012 draft that his career would go the way it was, I think he'd sign up for it. I know I would. And I wouldn't have changed anything when it comes to that first Super Bowl run, when it comes to his career, everything with Carson Wentz and all that. Of course, it was stressful. It was rocky. But that's exactly what Foles' career was. It was a roller coaster ride. And luckily for Eagles fans, we got the lightning in the bottle. And I feel old that he's calling it a career, but we had to honor the Eagles GOAT on today's edition of Locked On Eagles. But coming up next, we're going to switch sides. We're going to talk about the Eagles' defensive side of the football. What players should we be watching in the preseason opener tomorrow against the Baltimore Ravens? Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, for your second listen, make sure to enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Eagles Ravens tomorrow night in Baltimore for the Eagles preseason opener. Today, I want to get into what 6 defensive players I'm going to keep the closest eye on. And keeping it to 6 was tough, but I'm going to keep it to 6. Tomorrow, Gino and I will do 6 offensive players to watch. in that opener. So make sure to subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Of course, the number one guy you guys know I'm watching. All eyes are on the Eagles' first round pick, as they normally are. The first preseason game, most fans highly anticipate the first round pick. Like, that's who they want to watch the most, to see him in an Eagles jersey for the first time. And Quinyon Mitchell right now is in a fight for a starting job. He's taking first team reps in the slot. Looks like he's the favorite to win that job. But I will say why I'm also watching Quinyon, not just because I want to see him in live game action, see how he does look on the inside when it comes to like run fits, tackling, man coverage in there, when a more shifty receiver does have choice routes. It sounds like he's been doing great in that area, but I want to see him in live game action in that situation. But I also want to see if he can close the gap when it comes to this outside cornerback battle that's been mostly between Isaiah Rodgers and Kelee Ringo. Of course, I'm going to watch those two a lot, but I do want to see if Quinyon Mitchell is going to get a lot of looks on the outside as well. I'm very curious to see like how Vic Fangio splits up his reps on Friday. Does he play in the slot for a couple drives and then on the outside? Does he only play in the slot? Does he play like the entire second half on the outside? I'm not sure. I'm very curious. Quinyon has been getting more and more first team reps on the outside as this week's practices have gone on. So I'm genuinely curious to see where they use Quinyon, especially to see how he has translated on the inside. So obviously I'm watching Kelee Ringo, Isaiah Rodgers, continuing to watch that cornerback battle transpire. But Quinyon's the guy, of course, that I'm keeping the closest eye on. Because if he balls out, even though Rodgers and Ringo have been getting the majority of the work with this unit, Mitchell, if there is a tie, or if they think Mitchell looks really good, they might end up just saying, screw it, we're putting him on the outside and we'll figure out the slot. So Quinyon Mitchell, of course, is the number one guy that I'm watching on Friday night. And then two other guys I'm watching on the defensive line, on the interior. No, it's not Jalen Carter. No, it's not Milton Williams or Jordan Davis. I want to see how Moro Ojomo and Marlon Tuipulotu look in live game action, because the Eagles are really banking on those two to be your primary depth behind your big three. And if Jordan Davis remains a 1 to 2 down player and he doesn't take that next step, and if Milton Williams is an inconsistent player, they're going to need, even if those two are really good, they like to rotate 4 or 5 guys on the interior. They're going to use a lot of 3 defensive tackle looks. So the big three are going to play a lot. They're going to need some rest. So Moro Ojomo is going to play this year. He has the most athletic profile of any backup defensive lineman on the inside. He's going to play in relief of Jalen Carter and Milton Williams. Marlon Tuipulotu is the primary backup zero tech to Jordan Davis. So those two need to prove to Howie Roseman and Vic Fangio that, hey, you do not need to go out there and sign another veteran defensive tackle or go out there and trade for somebody. Ojomo and Tuipulotu have looked really good, it sounds like, throughout camp. But I want to see in a game if they do flash, and if we're confident that the Eagles can bank on their young guys to carry this rotation on the inside of the defensive line. So I'm really watching 3 guys especially. My top 3 are Quinyon Mitchell at corner. Will he play on the slot? Will he play on the outside? How often will he play both throughout this game? How much will he play in general, I think, is a big question. And then, are the depth pieces on the defensive side of the football, on the interior of the defensive line, are they enough? Is Moro Ojomo enough? Is Marlon Tuipulotu enough behind Carter, Williams, and Davis? Those are 3 guys I'm really keeping a close eye out for. Coming up next right here in the Locked On Eagles podcast, I got 3 more players for you you should be watching on defense tomorrow against the Baltimore Ravens. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app, actually, they go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. But not just the MLB, you can buy Eagles tickets on Game Time, any game in the NFL, concerts, comedy, theater events near you, you name it. Save up to 60% on everything through the Game Time app. Plus, on top of the great price you're getting, you can also make sure you're getting a great view with their panoramic view of your seat that's in the app before you buy your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB, NFL, and more, with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create that account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We're wrapping up this Thursday edition of Locked On Eagles with a first look at Eagles-Ravens tomorrow night. 6 players on the defensive side of the football that I'm keeping a close eye on. Quinyon Mitchell, Moro Ijomo, Marlon Tuipulotu. Those are my top 3 guys that I'm going to be watching the most tomorrow night. But there's other players as well that are in starting battles, rotational battles, long-term role battles that I'm also going to be watching. And 2 guys at the linebacker position I'm very curious about. It's Nakobe Dean and it's Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Right now, the favorites to be the starting 2 inside linebackers for the Eagles, it's definitely Devin White. And then surprisingly, Zach Bond has been the guy next to Devin White the majority of the time. However, Nakobe Dean has still been rotating in. Same with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. He's been getting more and more first-team reps as the weeks have gone on because he's been impressing at camp. Nakobe Dean really hasn't. Like, he's made some splash plays with blitz packages against the run, some solid tackles, but it sounds like he's been a significant coverage liability, and that's a problem. He's not going to be anything more than a rotational player if he's a problem in coverage. So Nakobe Dean, who came into the offseason, it felt like as the favorite, even when they signed Devin White, I think most people would have said, Nakobe Dean's the number 1 linebacker. He's the green dot player that's going to be on the field all the time after hearing Howie Roseman's comments. And it felt like Vic Fangio could get the most out of this guy. The Eagles just have not been able to tap into that potential of, right? But Zach Bond has been smarter, in better position, better in coverage, a better tackler. So was Jeremiah Trotter Jr. And Nakobe Dean now suddenly, I thought was the top guy in this rotation. Now is he 4th? At least, yes, right now, I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is ahead of him if the season ended today. So I'm definitely going to be watching those 2 in this game. If Trotter continues to make plays and he's always in the right position, he's a solid tackler, he shows off that high IQ, and Nakobe Dean continues to not really make any splash plays, sometimes become a liability in coverage, he might not play much. Is Nakobe Dean suddenly someone that's like a trade candidate that another team might want to buy low on? I'm not sure, but he really needs to make up ground, and live game action is where he's going to do it because he has not played a lot of games over the last 2 seasons, both the preseason and the regular season. So he needs to put good tape on Friday night. So Nakobe Dean, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., I don't know if they're going to be able to do enough to beat out Zach Bond right away. I feel like Bond has a really good lock on that number 2 spot. But they're going to rotate that position. Zach Bond is not going to be an every down player. He's not always going to play next to Devin White. They will rotate through other inside linebackers. So Trotter and Dean are kind of fighting right now. And maybe if they dominate and Bond's kind of whatever, one of them can jump him. Like, Bond's not some first round pick that they're committed to. They're married to long term. But for now, they need to fight for that 3rd spot and then get to Bond. And right now, Nakobe Dean, he's 4th. So I'm watching both. I'm excited to see Trotter in an Eagles jersey for the first time rocking that 54. I think he's going to make plays, but I'm keeping a closer eye out for Nakobe Dean. Like, hey man, this team gave you the benefit of the doubt. They invested a lot in you, put a lot of hope in you, and so far you've done nothing with it. What are you going to do now that they're kind of giving up? Your back's against the wall for the first time in a very long time in your football career, right? With Nakobe Dean. So let's see what he's got. We're going to see it tomorrow night. So definitely watching Trotter, definitely watching Dean. Also really excited to watch 3rd round rookie Jalix Hunt. Jalix Hunt was a guy that I thought was going to be a project this year. I thought he was going to be the 5th guy on the edge behind Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, Bryce Huff, Brandon Graham, in no order there. But I thought Jalix Hunt in the order would definitely be 5th. He might even be a scratch at times in a game or just a special teams player. But he has seemed like he's been coming along faster, I should say, in training camp than maybe we originally thought. And he is that more traditional overhang player, kind of like a Nolan Smith, that Vic Fangio does like. So if he pops, he's been popping in practice at times, making some splash plays, his pass rush moves, the speed to length, the bend. if he is showing off coverage ability, making plays on special teams, getting to the quarterback Friday night and throughout the preseason, maybe there's a role for him, right? Maybe him and Brandon Graham split that those snaps for the fourth edge spot. I could see it because Brandon Graham's in year 15, and I don't think they want him playing like 30+% of the snaps. So I think if their third round pick looks really good, they want him on the football field. So I'm excited to see how far along Jalix Hunt is. We've heard a lot of that from camp, but let's see it now in live game action. Let me know who you're watching tomorrow night on the Eagles defensive side of the football. Plus, tomorrow we take a look at 6 players on offense. So subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.